Good morning, guys of grade 9. Today, inshallah, we're gonna pass to section 1 of chapter 7, change over time. So, we're gonna pass to a new type of lessons. So, we keep talking about heredity and genetics and so on. So, today, inshallah, we're gonna talk about evolution. Okay, so we're gonna just try to relate these two types of lessons together. We're gonna see the reflection of heredity on the evolution of living organism or how different traits could make living organism be able to survive more than other traits and so on. So here we'll start by this question in front of you, just this idea. He said that the cockroach first appeared on Earth over 250 million years ago, and it's thriving today all over the world. A, a giant deer that was about 2 meters tall and had antlers about 3.6 meters wide first appeared less than 1 million years ago and become extinct around 11,000 years ago. So why do you think one animal could survive and the other are not? So that's a very, very important question. If we just look to the history of the Earth, we're gonna find there were a lot of living organisms where most of them are extinct nowadays, and some living organisms they still survive till that moment, okay, from a long time ago. So what makes them able to survive, others not? So simply, the answer is the genetic diversity between them or the genetic variety. So because different living organisms they don't carry the same traits, they have different traits, so some of living organisms they will be able by their traits to fit to adapt with the surroundings. That means they are more able to adapt with the surrounding environment. They could find their food easily. They could adapt with different temperatures, availability of water, blah blah blah. All the factors which found environment. Okay, so their traits enable them to do that. So easier to survive while some living organisms, their traits does not able them to survive or to adapt with the surroundings, so their numbers will decrease gradually until eventually they will be extinct. So that's here the idea, the kind of selection which happen, okay, regarding to the change of the environmental conditions, who could fit with these conditions and who could not. So that's which caused the evolution. So let's start here. By the end of this lesson, we should be able to identify two kinds of evidence that show that organisms have evolved, to describe one pathway through which a modern whale could have evolved from an ancient mammal, and explain how comparing organisms can provide evidence that they have ancestors in common. So first, let's start. We said that what is a species? First, we should have some terms. What is species? Species actually is a group of living organisms or group of individuals of the same kind of course. And the most important thing that these individuals can mate or they can reproduce, producing new fertile offspring. So actually the key word here is fertile. That means once they mate, they must produce new individuals which also have the ability to reproduce. So like this, we could recognize that all living organisms of the same kind that are able to produce and get fertile organisms, we call them species. So humans all over the world, they are one species, okay? Dogs, they are one species. Cats are one species. Donkeys are one species, and so on. But for example, when we say donkey and horse, both are one species, although they look similar in a lot of traits, and they somehow they belong to the same order in the classification, but actually they are not the same species, because once the dog and the horse they mate, okay, they will get produce a new offspring, but this new offspring is not fertile, is not able to get birth. Okay, so in that case, it's not a species. So here that the keyword or the must thing to determine that the species or not, that the offspring must be fertile. So here we see that a characteristic that help an organism to survive and produce in its environment is called adaptation. So actually we say adaptation, the ability of living organism to match with the environment. Okay, so to be able to match with the environment must have certain characteristics or certain traits that enable it to match with this environment. So we call this adaptation. So again, the characteristic we call this adaptive trait, or sometimes we call it adaptation. No problem. So here in that case, some living organisms that, for example, once two individuals they reproduce and produce offspring, not all the offspring they are exactly the same. They have different characteristics, different traits. Okay, among them, these different traits make some of them more able to fit with the environment, to match with the environmental condition, and some are not. So here the chance of these people which have these adaptive traits, okay, to survive more than others. Okay, So here, for example, we could observe they are frogs. They all of them are species, but as we can find, they have kind of genetic variety. They are different strains or different types of frogs. So what do you think? Do all these frogs think they could survive in the same conditions? For example, and we said which one of these frogs they could hide in mud or they could hide in forests and mud forest and stuff like this. So of course that will be the frog because its color enables it to camouflage within the mud and so on. If we ask which one of these frog, okay, that will give a chance or have a leverage to compete with other predators, so that will be one because it's poisonous, okay. So like this, each one has a certain trait that is not found in the other, and this trait enable it to match with certain environmental conditions. So if I put these two types of frogs in the same environment, do you think that both of them they will have the chance to survive, or they have the chance to be fit with this environment as the same? No, of course, because they don't have the same genetic characteristics or they don't have the same genetic traits. So in that case, one of them, okay, will adapt more than the other. Regarding this idea, we're gonna find here the idea of evolution start to appear. What the idea of evolution? Idea of evolution, they thought that all living organisms they are already evolved from one source. That means there were a common ancestor, just one living organism, and then as this living organism or as this kind of reproduction happen and produce a lot of offspring. Some of these offspring have traits than others. So as environmental conditions change, some of them survive and the other extincted. And years after years after years, over millions of years, new species are arising from old one. So here we said that scientists observe that species have a change over time. The process in which population gradually change over time is called evolution. So evolution, it means a change over time, but change for what? The change of a population, not a living organism. So no one ever, okay, think that a living organism, as environmental condition changes or as time passes, okay, it will change to another living organism. Never, because what happens, okay, is still limited, or any living organism is limited by its DNA or its genetic genotype, which received from his parents. So never ever they will change. But among a population, over time or as time passes, we could find a population of species they turn or they form another species. So it's hard a little. Let's take an example to clarify the idea, guys. For example, if we start to compare, okay, for example, we find fossils that prove that the old giraffe they have a short neck, okay, they aren't long neck giraffe as we have nowadays. So if you just look, okay, to these fossils, or if imagine that we have this short neck giraffe and you find moving, okay, so do you think, or you could able to think that the giraffe which you know nowadays is the same species like this old one? Of course not. You're gonna consider them as two different species. Okay. Why? Because they appear different. Yes, but actually they are the same. So what happened? So regarding to the theories of scientists, they assume that in all time all giraffes were short neck, but due to a mutation happened, some of giraffe appeared long neck. Then as they reproduced, okay, they passed this long neck to the new offspring. So after time, we have some giraffe with short neck and the others with long neck. A change in the environmental conditions happen, droughts happen, and so grass is not available. So short neck giraffe can't find enough food to survive, while long neck giraffe now has a trait which make them more able to adapt with new conditions. They able to eat from higher trees, so they survive. After time, short neck giraffe extincted, while the long neck they survive and continue. So like this, once we compare the old giraffe to the modern giraffe, we're gonna find they are somehow completely different. So we classify them as two different species. So here a group or a population of a certain species, okay, they evolved over time, okay, to a new species, okay, and so on. So here like this, that's the idea of evolution, or that's how evolution happened, okay. So now we have what the evidence, or how we could prove this. Actually, to understand evolution is just a kind of fact. We prove it by evidences, or we saw the evidences, or find the evidences first, that would make science have the idea of evolution. But what we could somehow argue about the explanation of how evolution happens. Actually, no one know how evolution happened. Just kind of theories, okay? Science start to hypothesis and put theories and so on. Okay, but we have some logic theories or some theories they are really supported by evidences and the others not, and like that. So let's start by the most important part. What are the evidences? Okay, so first thing, fossils. Okay, what are fossils? Fossils, they are remains or different part or imprints or traces, anything that give a hint that there were living organisms in that place. Okay, so of course this living organism must be extincted, and we, for your information, we just find fossils only in the sedimentary rocks only, because sedimentary rocks, they are rocks which could keep or save fossils without a change or without damage. So here we find that. So science makes something called fossil record. What is a fossil record? That means once science they find fossils, okay, in different places all over the world. They start to give a name for the fossil and record the approximately age of that fossil. So they, how they know the age of the fossil by different techniques. We could use, sometimes we use radioactive material, and sometimes regarding to the age of the rock which they are found in. So like this we could estimate the time where this living organism, okay, live. And then here they start to put this fossils in a record, in a sequence, based on the age and based on that type of the living organism they already found. And then they start to compare these fossil records, okay, to each other, and they get some, a lot of hints about this. Okay, so we find regarding to the fossil record that evidence to prove that the old fossils or the oldest fossils ever, okay, they shows that they start with prokaryotic organism, not eukaryotic organism. Okay, so here also, okay, they found that the fossil record provides evidence about the order in which species have existed. That means prokaryotes already found before eukaryotes. Then we find that the life starts in water before it passes to the land. Okay, that means aquatic living organism considered to be older than uh, land living organism. So like this, we could predict that eukaryotic organisms are evolved from prokaryotes, and terrestrial lands, they, or the living organisms that live on land, they already evolved from aquatic living organisms, and so on. So here we have something we call drawing connections. So science have named and described hundreds of thousands of living and ancient species based on their fossils, and they start to link what they are look similar to each other. They put them, okay, or the species in the sketch, or then they start to link them together by lines. So they make a tree of life in which represent the sequence of graduation, or which one is more similar to the next, and so on. So they make a tree of life which represent, okay, the kind of this. Okay, so here let's take a case study, evolution of a whale, how the whale evolved. Okay, so scientists think that the ancient ancestor of a whale was probably a mammal that lived on land. So yeah, and we know that whale is mammal. Okay, so it looked like a fish, but actually it's not a fish. We describe it's mammal. Why? Because it gives birth. Okay, and it also it breathes through lungs, not gills. Okay, so it doesn't have the characteristics of fish, but it has the characteristic of mammal. Although it have a out appearance that's similar to fish, okay, but actually the structure, internal, or the anatomy, the internal physiology of this is not like a fish at all. So here we know it's mammal, but we ask how it looked like in the past, or how it was. Actually, we find it was, or science they assume it was a mammal that live in land that have four legs, okay, that could run and move on land. So here, walking whale, the first step. So we see that the organisms shown on the next slide, okay, form a sequence between ancient four-legged mammal and the modern whale, how they are. So several species of evidences indicate that these species are related by ancestry. So as we can find here, guys, we have that sequence which you observe. So we find, as we can observe, of course, if I said that was the whale, okay, of course you won't believe that. Okay, but why? Because we are comparing the origin by the last version. Okay, of course they are completely different. But once we look to the transitional stages between them, we may believe here. Okay, so we find that the first kind of the whale, or the first one. Okay, so here, Pakistis, okay, that's science think about whales evolved from land mammal that has, okay, so this one found about 50 million years ago. And as we can see, the fossil skeletons appears like this, okay? So here it has four legs, okay, and tail, like any mammal that live on land. So here we find another pause about 49 million years ago. That means just 1 million year between them. If we look to the skeletons of these two organs, we're gonna find there are a little similarity between them. The skull have the same structure approximately. Also here we find the tail is still the same, okay, and the rib cage. But so we have some difference in the upper limb and the lower limb, okay. So what happened here? Okay, we find that the legs somehow modified to be able to kick, okay. So here, like this, okay, to present a kind of difference. So here we find that it could swim by kicking its legs and using the tail for balance. It could also waddle and hand, okay, so it could use hand as a pedals to push, okay, water. So here the somehow look similar, okay, little differences. This new differences make this kind of living organs able to swim, while this one, of course, not. Okay, so here we have a little difference. Then layer, okay, that's mean after 40 millions, that means just 9 million years later, okay, we find here that's the new shape. It still have the same, okay, skull structure approximately, okay, but we observed something that the back limb somehow disappeared and turned into small tiny bones, okay, and here also we find that the forelimb, okay, somehow also changed, okay, turned to like a beetles or something like that, okay. So here, and we have a massive tail now, okay, it's found. So here that changes happened, okay. Modern whale which we have it nowadays, okay, so the modern whales we find that the forelimb is completely changed to make it flippers or pedals which help them in swim. The back limb of crocodile are just very small, of the back limb they are very small, okay. Bones or the hip bones they are not found, just very small again. And like this we could find how. So if we keep comparing, so if we compare this skeleton to the first one like this, of course they are completely different, but once we look to the transitional stages between them, we could prove that there is a kind of evolution happened to this living organisms, guys. Okay, so here then we passing to comparing organisms, how we compare living organisms to each other. We could comparing the skeletal structure, the structure and the order of bones and the human arms are similar to those in front limbs of cats, dolphin, and bats. All of them, although we have different uses of this of upper limb or front limb, but still have the same structure. One bone in the arm, okay, two bones after the elbow, and just five fingers, okay, and the hand, and so on. So that's how you can find this structure in the human, in the cat, okay, in the dolphin, even the pet, okay. So here, that's mean as we have this structure, they are similar. What will really determine that structure? Our genes, and we receive our genes from that. So like this, we could pack, okay, to prepare that these genes already are come from a common ancestor. So as we can see here, the human arm, the cat leg, dolphin flipper, and the bat wing, all of them they have the same structure. One bone here, two bones here, and the five fingers. However, the shape change and the size of the bone to match the function which is gonna do. So here, for example, we find that we have our hand, and that's shape to be able to catch and grab and so on, while the cat have this kind, okay, that's to enable them to jump. Here the dolphin or the bat or the whale, they have this like this to be like a flippers or or pedals to be able to push forward, okay. And here the bats they appear like this to be able to extend wings to fly and so on. So here that's also an evidence for evolution. But here, guys, we have to get some, that's a part out of lesson, but actually regarding to human, could we involve the human in this kind of theories of evolution and so on? Actually not, okay. That means human doesn't pass by evolution. No, human pass by evolution, okay. We could prove that because we already find some fossils and skulls of old humans which are somehow different than the modern humans which we know, or the human sapiens, the species of the human which we belong to. But we don't believe that the human already, okay, is considered to be a part of the common ancestor theory. That means we are sharing other animals, the ancestors, because we know how the human is created, okay, by, okay, through different religions. Already a lot told us how different living organisms are, or how, sorry, a human is arised and so on. So that's here our just kind of rich science, or just we gonna put a point here that human could be excluded from this theory, while this theory is still true for other living, or may be true for other living organisms, guys. Okay, so here we find that. another thing or another evidence that we could prove there is evolution comparing the DNA. So as we take different samples of the DNA of different living organisms which is already extincted and modern living organisms which is already living, okay, and we compare their DNA, we find there are similarities in a lot of genes. There are some genes which are common between different living organisms and even between the living organisms which are already extincted, which prove that these genes already comes from one source or they share the same ancestor. Okay, so here the fact that all existing species have DNA supported the theory that all species share a common ancestor, as we said. Okay, so here like this, guys, that the evidences or that's how we prove there is evolution, and we know what the meaning of evolution. Okay, and at the end of our lesson, please study your lesson very well, and if you have any questions, thank you and goodbye.